Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Supergirl. So a lot of interesting things went down in this episode. First and foremost, there's that whole thing at the beginning I thought was kind of fascinating, where it's like, oh, Alex has a memory of Midvale 2007, and it's like a Kara, and I'm like, that's so interesting. Like, it turns out later on, it's like, oh, that was probably like the first time Kara ever flew. It's like her carrying Alex, but nevertheless, it was so interesting to me because I guess because like the way Kelly explains it later on, because I was like, oh, it's like, is John's like memory white kind of like losing its effect? It's like, no, Kelly was basically saying that the fact is losing the chance on the adoption falling through kind of triggered something in, Alex's brain. Basically the synapses in her brain kind of like started connecting certain things, because obviously it's like, oh, this adoption didn't work out, her sister Kara being adopted, and it's like, oh, so it's like, so that's slowly piecing together like that. I was like, oh, I thought that was kind of interesting. I would have never expected things to kind of play out like that. Once again, it kind of plays into what I was bringing up last week's episode. I'm still unsure whether or not Kelly knows about Kara. Once again, it's that whole conversation of, I don't think Jimmy told her, because she probably doesn't even know that Clark's actually Superman, because it's like, well, that's their secret and I know it, but who am I to tell anybody, even my own sister? So she probably doesn't know about Clark or Kara. So I just thought that was just kind of interesting. I think this episode kind of solidifies that in my head, because I felt like if that was the case, then maybe Kelly would have taken that chance and be like, oh, Kara, I think your sister's starting to remember. So, and the conversation never came up to her to not say anything. So nevertheless, we're picking up with the president having captured Kara, and it's like, yep, he's been working with Lex the entire time, which is kind of, I love that those guys are like, oh, we're going to hold you here, because obviously the president doesn't know about Kara. And so those guys are just like, yeah, I love Kara being like, yeah, you guys kind of captured the wrong person. But lo and behold, the Red Daughter shows up. And it is kind of interesting, like, her, because she's so brainwashed by Lex, because it's like, no, Lex is looking out for the greater world, but constantly bringing up the fact is like, but you squander what you are, what you could be capable of. The fact of the matter is, kind of saying she's selfish, and the fact is she's fighting for this American dream, that she's like essentially saying the American dream is bullshit, everything that this country represents, because it's like, oh, look at the racism and this and that, which, to be fair, it's like, what country is perfect? No country in the world has a perfect history. Every country has their not so, every place is flawed. Why? Because humans are flawed. But for her, it's just kind of like, she's like, no, the fact of the matter is, like, I'm gonna be the one to kind of slim away all the nasty and corruptness of this place once I have my way with it, essentially. And Lex is doing this all for the greater good. So in her mind, it's like taking out the US, it's like, no, this is for the greater good of the world. This isn't, you're so focused on just helping out this country and everything it represents. But I did like the conversation that Kara was having with her, because as she was getting closer to the kryptonite, she was kind of getting a little messed up, and she's like, see, the thing is, you've only been dealing with kryptonite for a few months, because she's only existed for a few months. Me, I've been dealing with it for years. So you don't have 100% of tolerance to it, but I think when you've crossed paths with kryptonite enough times, you kind of build up a little bit of an intolerance enough to kind of wiggle your way through it. So I thought that was pretty neat. And obviously, Kara goes to Alex, and the whole situation of, now she's in that complicated situation of like, okay, so she wants to tell Alex the truth, but John is like, you can't, because basically it would overwhelm her brain, because her brain already compensated for the fact is those missing memories. Like, she's already kind of created like a wall, and it's like, if you basically tell her the truth, it's like you're taking a sledgehammer to that wall. Essentially, the two conflicting memories that she has would basically make her kind of basically have a breakdown, and it's like you could literally drive her insane like that. So it's like, can I never get my sister back? John's like, well, there's always a possibility if she remembers on her own, but even then, he's not 100% guaranteed. I love also, while this was happening, like, there's a conversation between Alex, Brainy, and Lena about like, oh, what they should do next. I love Brainy being like, oh, so I'm going to tell Dreamer that I love her. And you have Lena and Alex being like, oh, okay, good luck. He's like, thank you, and walks away. I'm like, because he's so nonchalant about it, because it's so interesting, because like, I'm sure this is like Dreamer's his first love, and I'm sure, like, especially for like his species, love being such a probably antiquated thing of like, emotions. Ugh, that's so basic, it's like they're kind of above every other species probably in their minds. Like, that's probably how like Brainiac's species typically thinks. I would assume so, especially with everything that kind of breaks down later on in the episode, but I'll get to that soon enough. But Lena and Alex are just kind of flabbergasted, because they're just like, Okay, let's get to this. Well, and since I'm on the subject, I do love it that every time it comes up, like he's talking to John, he's like, "No, I need to tell Nia how I feel because if I can get this off my chest, then everything will go back to normal." But John's like, "It doesn't work like that." He's like, "It's not. How does love work?" And it's like that's the crazy thing. It's like, yeah, you kind of have to literally explain it to Brainy because it's something he doesn't quite understand. Like I said, that's what proves it to me that this is his first time falling in love. And when the time comes, he tries to tell Dreamer the truth, but it doesn't work out. And I love every time he tries to pretend to be someone else. You can still, like, his mannerisms still peek through, and he's just kind of like talking to them and everything, but still doing brainy mannerisms and even talking like himself, even when he's trying to be someone else. I always think that's kind of neat. But sadly, they ended up getting captured, and they ended up torturing, or whatever they did. They must have shorted out his system or whatever, because he ends up restarting. And I loved Brainy kind of explaining what was happening, essentially making a comparison to Pandora's box. Them doing what they did, opened up that box. There's pieces of himself he compartmentalizes and ships away, but the fact is, because they kind of rebooted his system, it kind of unlocked the box unintentionally. And for him, it's like his lineage of, they are conquerors, and that's something he's always stayed himself away from, because like amongst his family, he's the first time hero, because as we know with the original Brainiac, him being the monster that he was, like Brainy went down a completely different path. Now whether that was, I feel like they vaguely alluded to how that ended up happening. It might be a thing of like Brainy just saw what his family is capable of. It's like, I don't want that to be me. But it turns into that almost like nature versus nurture thing. It seems like it's kind of in Brainy's nature to naturally be like that. But it seems like either someone or something inside of him just shifted off to be like, no, I won't be like that. And he's become the Brainy we know. But in that moment, he shifted and became just almost like Brainiac, just calculated. Not straight up evil, but it's more like a neutral thing of like no emotions behind anything. This is my goal, I'm gonna accomplish it. Good, evil, doesn't matter. He kind of takes those guys down in a very brutal way, like breaking arms and taking it down like that, and knocking them down. Like Brady wouldn't do that. He'd just like either make them kind of knock themselves out, but he'd never use more aggressive tactics like that. He's very evasive and he kind of parries, if you want to use it like, fighting terms and stuff like that. But he's very passive with the way he fights. But even John was like, what happened here? And he's like, he handled things. And when it came time to save Nia, instead of saving her, and it's like you almost had that sweet moment, he's kind of on one knee and you see her kind of smiling, because she's like, oh, what are you about to do? And it's like, oh, I'm not going to let you free because I can use you as bait. You can end up going through the portal, you can astral project and tell me where you are. And it's like, wait, what are you doing, Brady? He's like, the fact of the matter is, we're going along with your plan about the whole thing of getting captured. Which I also love John being like, why does every plan always involve us getting captured? I also love it being like the whole like Star Wars reference. And he's like, John's like, you've never seen Star Wars? He's like, I've been shamed about this enough already. But nevertheless, and even to the point he knocks John out. And, just for this plan and everything. So it's like, oh, well, with John taken out, that would also make it possible for, using both of you as means to making this plan doubly successful. And even if it doesn't work out, I'll think of another plan. I always do. And it's so sad, too, because, like, Mia's looking at him and it's like, will she know the truth? Will this complicate things between them in the future? I don't know. It's sad to thinking that might be a possibility. I wonder, is there any shifting Brainy back to who he was? Maybe if he gets another restart, his old, kind of his original OS, that being just the Brainy that we've known. Well, I guess you can make the argument this is his original OS. But I guess, like, if they restarted him, maybe he could go back to being himself again. Hopefully this isn't a permanent thing. Because the last thing we need is him like this, just kind of like, I guess you can almost compare it to him almost not having a soul right now, just because it's like, what's good, what's evil, I don't really know. I know that of this mission I need to accomplish, and that's it. It's that more aspect of him, because Bernie is very human-like, even though he has his like machine aspects of being like, what's this and what's that, not really understanding things. But the fact of the matter is, he's very human-like, and that human side of him has kind of been shut off right now. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see where that goes. It's interesting because it's all trails back to what Lex is up to. The whole point was that basically the Claymore satellite, he was trying to remake another one, and it seems like he was using the aliens as energy, especially the ones he's captured, the ones that John and Dreamer are part of. That group are going to be used and converted into energy, so there's that. You have Lena and Jimmy going after Ben, But Ben and Lena have the whole conversation because she's like, oh, it's when in this moment, like Lena goes, oh wait, you didn't know about what my brother was up to. You didn't realize you were a pawn. Because she's like, don't you realize, didn't you it click in your head that things were just a little too easy? That everything that was literally handed to you, working with the president and everything, because he's secretly working with Lex, like all of this and that, it's like, oh. And it starts clicking in Ben's hand, being like, wait, what? Because in his mind, he thought everything he did was like, oh, because I did this on my own, people believed in my message. It's like, no, you were just another pawn. And you know, in his mind, it's probably a thing of like, if it wasn't for Lex, his wife wouldn't be dead. It's like, yeah, that was more so him, but the fact of the matter is, it's like everything that went down has been Lex's manipulation, so if it wasn't for him, none of this would have happened. I'm kind of assuming that's kind of where Ben's mindset is, because he goes to confront Otis, and I love Otis being kind of the idiot, being like, he's like, it's a win-win-win. He's like, no, wait. Win-win. Yeah, it's like, you're such an idiot, Otis. The fact of the matter is, that whole thing of like, oh, why is Lex doing this? Money and world domination. It's kind of his thing. It's like, yeah, because that is a whole conversation too. Because even Lena had brought it up, being like, you thought you were saving the world. You literally handed it over to a psychopath. Which even, you know, Kara has brought it up, being like, you're literally working with the man who tried to blow up the planet on multiple occasions. It's like, yeah, no matter what angle you're getting out of this, the fact is that even the president will kind of agree to that. You're literally working with the world's biggest supervillain. One of Superman's arch enemies. If you're working with Superman's arch enemy, you got to know you're on the wrong side of things. Which even makes that whole situation of him painting Supergirl as a villain even more fucked up, because that means he was in on it the entire time. It makes that whole situation even more suckier. You know, it's just kind of like you paint her as the villain when you're actually the villain yourself. It's like, I wonder if it's going to end up with, I'm blanking on the original president's name. The president who's an alien. She was, the actress who plays her is the actress who played Wonder Woman back in the day. Isn't it Linda Carter? The actress, yes, I think that's her name. But yeah, I'm wondering, I'm assuming when it's all said and done, it'll probably get her back in the presidency, because it's like, that's probably going to help bring the states back together, especially when it's like, oh yeah, your current president, yeah, he kind of set things in motion to kind of put places into war. Like this whole thing, he's been working with Lex Luthor and this and that, is probably going to undermine everything, ranging from the Children of Liberty to this presidency. It's definitely going to be interesting. Whether Otis is dead after that little confrontation, I'm unsure, because I don't know whether they outright rebuilt Otis, like after he exploded before in the prison, or was that them like, oh no, we have spare bodies ready ahead of time. I'm sure that was just them piecing together. So I mean, I'm sure if they find his body, they can bring him back. Whether they will or not, that comes down to whether or not Lex needs him. Maybe if Eve finds his body, it's like, oh, you idiot, and then it's like, okay, let me piece you back together. Maybe we'll see on that. But it does seem like the Harrenhal does, like, even in Jimmy's case of him getting like a more perfected version, it still seems like it has its limits. Because definitely the one that Ben injected himself with did seem like it had deteriorating effects immediately. So that was definitely interesting. I love that Lena ended up going to her mom for help and putting like an alien thing on her that makes her tell the truth and stuff like that. And it's like, what about my middle school boyfriend? I paid him $14,000 so that he'd never speak to you again. It's like, of course. And I'm sure in her twisted mind, it's like, oh, because I didn't need you to have distractions. I needed you to be focused and fully capable of what you're capable of. I needed you to see the harsh realities of that people could leave you and abandon you out. I'm sure the thought process too, it's like, see, the fact of the matter is he could be bought. Shows you he wasn't that special to begin with. I'm sure there was some logic behind that. Probably not that. She probably didn't even think of that. She probably just thought more so like he is a distraction. You are destined for greater things, just like your brother, blah, 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 blah. I even love it later on being like, oh, you want to help out, tell me where Lex is. It's like, well, it's kind of hard to be all, helpful with your son, especially when like, oh, he was planning to come and kill you later on. So that puts a damper on that relationship, especially because she looked at him. It's like, oh, he's my precious little boy. So that's the irony behind all of that. And considering everything between her and Lena kind of feeling the way she does, I doubt Lena would ever plot to kill you. She's probably thought about it. She probably would have never enacted upon it. She feels the way she does towards her mom, but she would never do that. It's surprising. It's like, oh, your favorite son would obviously do that. So it's just, once again, just the irony behind all of it. I do love it where Lena was kind of like, the fact that matters, I would ask you if you really love me, but I already know the answer to it. But when she was like, I'm gonna go see Ben Lockwood, like, are you worried about me? She's like, yes, of course, because I love you. And even Lena was kind of like, wait, what? And she's like, well, there, you finally got it out of me. You happy? And it's like, because Lena was looking like, what? Because she didn't actually think that was possible. It's like, yeah, like I said, in her own twisted way, she actually did love Lena because she always expected so much from Lena. That's why she was so harsh to her, because it's like, oh, I was preparing you for the greatness I knew that was inside of you. Hence the whole boyfriend situation back in middle school. So it's just, like I said, in her own twisted way. I also thought it was kind of interesting too, because it's like, she was like, can't you just, threaten me, like torture me like any normal person, waterboarding? You don't have to poison me and stuff like that. I love it later on when she's trying to give her the cure and everything. She's like, come on, like, we can drop the pretenses. You didn't poison me. She's like, I'd drink it if I were you. Now, that's the thing about Lena. You don't know whether that's the truth or whether that's a double bluff. Because it could be a thing of like, no, like, I legitimately poison you. You don't work under the right conditions without a proper threat. And also maybe it's because, yeah, there's a part of me that kind of doesn't like you and kind of hate you a little bit, so I did that. It's like there's that Luther gene in her, but there's also the double bluff I'm thinking of, because it's like the fact that she's smirking and everything, and it's just knowing that like her mom can't take the chances, because she's like, I don't know whether to believe you or not. You could be lying, but why take the chances? So I kind of feel like it's probably a bluff, because I don't think Lena would necessarily do that, but I could be wrong. Like I said, you never know with that Luther gene. But Lena's kind of the best of her family, so you kind of have to take it as is. So I'm curious where the truth lies in that. Like I said, I'm assuming she didn't, but who knows? And luckily they were able to help Jimmy. It seems like by doubling up the Harinel in his system, they kind of compensate for it. Seems like the same thing for Ben, because he injected himself twice. Whether that's going to be 100% the case, because still his serum, the second one was still part of the test batch too, so it might still wear off, or there might be catastrophist. Is that actually a word? Catastrophist? Catastrophic is probably what I'm trying to think of. Sorry. Catastrophic ramifications for that. Still probably the same way with Jimmy. I mean, it's Lillian too. She's like, oh, I figure things out, but she still had the truth thing on her too. So, but we still don't know what the effects might be, because Jimmy wanted to keep his superpowers because it's like we don't know what's coming up next and we're going to need them, so that's definitely interesting. There's a whole situation with Kara and Alex I thought was kind of pretty neat, where it's like, Supergirl is telling Alex, like, no, you stay back. I'll handle this on my own. She's like, why are you being so weird? It's just like, no, just stay back. Because obviously she's worried. She doesn't want Alex to get mixed up in this, especially if they're going up against someone who literally has all her powers. It's like, you could die. Kara goes there and investigates. It's like, wow, you literally have a place exactly like mine. And so it's like, oh, she is literally stalking me. And so it is interesting, though. Once again, it's like that whole conversation of like, oh, you squander everything you have, literally going to Eliza and kind of capturing her. And I also love, I'm skipping over it, but I meant to talk about that line from Alex I thought was kind of very beautiful and sentimental, and the line of like, the fact is when it comes to Kara, it's like, oh, she's been spying on my sister, and it's got her worried, because it's like the fact of the matter is, I feel like a piece of my heart is missing, and that piece is out there by herself, not knowing what kind of danger is there, and I'm not there to protect her. I won't always be there to protect her, and that terrifies Alex, because she doesn't know, like, Kara's, I mean, even with knowing that Kara is Supergirl, it still worried her that, her sister kind of jumps headfirst into danger. She's a superhero and everything. But, Kara held her own against the Red Daughter. Obviously, they had the same powers, but it is kind of interesting because, like, the Red Daughter is like a more evolved version, so it seems like she has added abilities. I wonder where did that come from. I would assume Lex kind of added some stuff like that, or is it supposed to represent the fact is that as a Kryptonian, she could actually go even further? I mean, it's kind of interesting when you even break down, like if you even comparing it to Smallville, you saw Clark slowly but surely learn his other abilities, like find out what else he was capable of. Obviously, it took him a very, very long time to fly on his own. That's a whole thing, season 4. So it's a whole thing. But obviously, much later in the series, it took him to learn how to properly fly on his own. But nevertheless, me going on a bit of a tangent, but it's interesting. So maybe there's more to that situation that Kara's capable of. I did kind of like that, like flip heel kick she did and everything. She was kind of like winning had an upper hand, because no matter what training that the Red Daughter's been through, it's like, well, Kara's had her powers for a lot longer. But to be fair, the Red Daughter's been through a lot more strenuous training. To be fair, Supergirl's going up against a lot more people with similar abilities. This is like the Red Daughter's first time, so that's something to be considered as well. But because of that whole like lightning around her fist thing, whatever power that is, she definitely had an upper hand. It was pretty bad. It was almost like that. To a certain extent, it was almost like that Rain fight over again, which was brutal all on its own. It's kind of, you're almost getting a repeat of that in this regard. And seeing, Supergirl like that, Alex, it triggers the memories and she remembers who Kara is. And it's like sad just to see her like that. And it's like to see, because I'm sure for Alex, let's not forget how scared out of her mind Alex was when she saw Kara like that originally fighting Rain. Like, because that was the first time it had ever been that one-sided of a fight. And in this case, seeing that repeated again, especially because Kara's heart stopped beating. This actually plays into something I thought was kind of fascinating, the whole thing about, like, the whole discussion about, what's the sensation like when you absorb solar energy. It's like this feeling, this kind of like burning sensation in your toes, and I was like, oh, that's so interesting, because I feel like no one's ever, maybe that's come up in the comic books. I don't remember any show ever really explaining, like, what the sunlight feels like a Kryptonian. I guess it's almost interesting because it's almost like a plant, when you actually, because like the fact is that's how she draw all the solar energy from the plants and stuff like that. I'm like, has that come up before in any continuity that I'm aware of? Like, once again, I only know TV shows and movies, but that's so interesting. I mean, it's like, yeah, there's solar energy built in that because of photosynthesis and stuff like that. So I guess you could, draw upon it, but it's like, is it something you would subconsciously do? Is it something she consciously did? I don't know. Either way, that's so interesting. Because that means that, even under the most dire of circumstances, as long as there's some nature around, you can still draw some energy upon it, so even at night. So I thought that was pretty neat. And I love it, too, they're reunited again. It's like fully, because it's like, oh, remember who you are. It's like, yes, I missed you. I've missed you so much, too, Then we also learn about Lex's plan. The whole plan was to take the satellite, the Claymore, but make it a condensed version and made it for an exosuit. All that energy is for one suit, obviously for him to fight and quote-unquote kill Supergirl. So now it looks like, oh man, he's the hero, he's the champion and everything. Now, what's going to be interesting is when it probably gets revealed, like, oh, like, you're going to see two Supergirls at the same time, then later on, and that's probably going to be the whole thing. Now, what I was wondering about was the whole thing about Kara, well, the Red Daughter. She heard a slowing heartbeat. I was like, was that her hearing Kara's? She might have at first thought it was Kara's, but then she was like, heard something else, and she's like, oh no. So one of two things. One, that was Lex kind of, either he sent out a signal like he's in trouble or something, or she thought that was his heartbeat, thinking like, oh, he's in trouble. He led her into the trap, and then he proceeded to fight her and potentially kill her. Which is even sad, because Kara was telling her, when it's all said and done, Lex is just going to kill you because you're a loose end. You're a means to an end once this is all said and done. But it's like, no, Alex isn't like that. Not realizing, like, the Alex that she kept, being drawn to and listening to, that was Alex from, that's Kara's Alex. But Lex took advantage of that, knowing that Alex, that whole thing, So I'm wondering, is she dead, or did she just get beat to the point of, like, it's Lex, so I wouldn't put him past him to outright kill her. Now, remember, like, Kara kind of uses it as an example, too, is Mikhail being like, oh, yeah, obviously you care about him, so it's not like it's just me that cares about one person. But it's like, oh, it's funny that you mentioned it, because Americans killed him, which, let's not forget, Otis spared a kid, so I was thinking, what if that's another thing, too, like, was that what she heard? Could that have been it? Was it Lex's heartbeat, or was it Mikhail's heartbeat? Did she hear him and be like, did she recognize him? Like, wait, that can't be. I'm assuming it's the first one, but there was a part of my brain that afterwards that was kind of thinking, well, maybe it's that. Maybe she ends up finding out the truth, because that's got to circle back at some point. That might be actually why her and Lex fought. It wasn't, well, maybe Lex used that as a means to kind of draw her out. I was like, oh yeah, Otis kept him alive. Well, now I'm going to take care of him or threaten him, and that causes them to fight, and I don't know. Because it looked like it wasn't a one-sided fight. It looked like there was some destruction. So if it was just him killing her, it should have been like a lot less destructive. So I'm thinking there was some motivation there. So she must have found out he was still alive, and it's like, wait, Lex was behind all of this. Like I said, whether he set that in motion to make it so it's like, no, use it to fuel her fire so they could fight and make it look real, or she stumbles across it on her own. I have no idea. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this takes us. Next week's episode is, in fact, the season finale. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where everything goes from here, because I feel like there's going to be a lot dropped. Obviously, like everything with Brainy, John, and Nia. The whole Nia and Brainy thing is definitely going to be interesting. I think Kara's secret about who she is, really, at least Lena's going to find out some other way. Either it's going to be her mom dropping that information because she popped up this episode. Part of me was thinking like, oh, she's got that truth thing on her, so she's going to end up spilling the beans in that regard. Maybe not. It'd be interesting if the Red Daughter did survive, because we could have her potentially going somewhere else, being like, other planets could use a Supergirl. To be fair, she wouldn't be Supergirl on any other planet, so I'm wondering how they will end it. I mean, like I said, if she is dead, she might just outright be dead. So, which is just sad to see, like, that in the end of all this, that's just where her story ends. Even Ben Lockwood, where is his story going to end? Probably going to sacrifice himself fighting Lex. Like I said, I'm curious. You can guess and potentially how all this is going to end, but still, there's hopefully it's like I said, Linda Carter's character comes back to be the president when this is all said and done. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this all plays out in the season finale. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.